Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Okay, this video is about westerns. If you love westerns, or maybe if you don't, I have a few questions for you. Now, I'm making this video on, 11th of August. If things had been going well, then in the next week or so, I would be going back to the cinema to see Horizon and American Saga Chapter 2. But unfortunately, things have not gone well, and the release date for Chapter 2 is uncertain at this moment. We don't know if we're going to get to see it in the cinemas. And I think that's a real shame. I absolutely loved the experience of seeing Chapter 1 in the cinema, and I really liked the idea of being able to come back in a couple of months and see this saga continue. Now we're not going to know what that feeling is like, and I find that a real shame. And the questions I have is, certainly I've interacted with a lot of movie YouTubers here on YouTube, and a lot of you claim that you really enjoy the Western genre. But none of the regulars that I interact with actually went to see this Chapter 1 in the cinema. And I'm just curious as to why that is. So I just want to ask a few general questions around that, and also just look at some of the comments that I've seen on other sort of YouTube channels, bigger channels, I guess, where they have talked about the movie, and people have put their feedback in there as to why they didn't go and see it. So let's tackle some of that. So firstly, one of the big complaints that I read about the idea of even having this Western play out in 4 parts was that people just weren't buying into that. They just thought, no, that's a stupid idea for the movies. This should be a TV series. So with that in mind, I just want to ask you, are you familiar with these Western TV series? Walter Hill's Broken Trail, James A. Michener's Centennial, Lonesome Dove, and its follow-ups Return to Lonesome Dove and Streets of Laredo. The series Deadwood, and Taylor Sheridan's offshoot of Yellowstone, 1883. Have you seen these Western TV series? And what were your thoughts on those? Were these series that you thought, yeah, I'm glad that I've seen these on TV? Or was there any element of them in which you thought, actually, I would love to see this on the big screen? Did that occur to you at all? Now, obviously, a lot of those series are very long. Deadwood in particular ran for several seasons. Centennial was 27 hours. So, yes, acknowledge those ones are not going to be in the format that is suitable for cinema. But what about, say, Lonesome Dove? That's a really beloved Western series that ran for a bit over 6 hours. So if that had been broken up into parts to see at the cinema, would you have wanted to do that? And then another aspect is Kevin Costner. Are you a Kevin Costner fan? Do you enjoy his westerns, or is that a turn-off for you? Now, for me, I definitely grew up watching Kevin Costner's meteoric rise to stardom in the 80s. The first western that he was in was this one, Silverado, in which he had a sort of very cheeky role in this. And this one really established his partnership with director Lawrence Kasdan as well. And they went on to work together again on this one, Wyatt Earp. But for many people, Wyatt Earp is quite a bloated western that is just too long. Now, I actually enjoy this one quite a lot, but yeah, I do think it is too long. But yeah, for most western lovers, if you ask them to compare this one with, say, Tombstone, which came out around the similar time, most people are going to choose Tombstone. And then as a director, as well as being an actor, then Kevin Costner had Dances with Wolves, his Oscar-winning movie. I absolutely loved seeing this at the cinema. And this is the director's cut, which goes on for 4 hours. So, yeah, another very long Western. And then he also directed this one, Open Range. This was his last Western before having done Horizon. So this is quite a popular one. But again, it's quite a long one. It does play for over 2 hours, and that's a bit of a criticism that's levelled against Costner on some of his films, is that they just play too long. So maybe that's what put people off on Horizon, the prospect of seeing something that's going to be close to 10 hours split over 4 parts. That's just crazy. Well, like I say, I absolutely love part 1, the 3 hours that I saw, and I was definitely looking forward to seeing the rest of it. Other criticisms I read were that the Western is dead and that we've seen it all before. Now, is that really the case when it comes to the American Western? I'm not sure that it is. I think there's still plenty more stories that can be told about different aspects of the American West, and also stories that can be retold, but you can tell them in a way that's more historically accurate and that has more appropriate casting as well. If you think back to a lot of older Westerns, the casting of Native Americans particularly is very inappropriate at times. So yeah, there's plenty of room for maneuver in telling some of these Western stories, I think. But is it also that people's attitudes towards the Western and the type of Western that they want to see has moved? Definitely, it seems to me in more recent years that people have been enjoying discovering Italian Westerns much more than the American Westerns. So certainly the popular Westerns that I hear about nowadays definitely are the Sergio Leone Westerns, the Sergio Corbucci Westerns, and others of that kind of nature, all these kind of savage guns, vengeance trails type Westerns that are on the market now. So those are the ones that people are focusing more, particularly when it comes to physical media. It was interesting, recently I heard a podcast, Heath at Serial at Midnight podcast. He did a discussion with one of the representatives from Kino Lorber, and they were talking about what was selling there and what wasn't. And when it came to Westerns, interestingly, they were saying that when they were trying to release a lot of older Westerns, those ones just aren't selling, other than perhaps someone like Audie Murphy in box sets, because those types of Westerns are still popular, mainly because of Audie Murphy. So yeah, so if you're a Western lover, then what is your appetite nowadays? Is it that you concentrate much more on the sort of gunfight, gunslinging type Westerns of Sergio Leone and Sergio Corbucci? Or do you go back to the older Westerns as well, and do you like those? Do you think that there is still stories that can be told about the American West? Now, I just want to come back to Centennial for a moment, because I think this is quite a key one. So this is a series that came out in the 70s. Huge cast that's involved in this that included Robert Conrad, Richard Chamberlain, Richard Crenna, David Jansen, Barbara Carrera, loads and loads of others. And this covered a period of 200 years. So, all right, yeah, Horizon American Saga is only covering a much shorter period in the 1880s-ish. And this was going from about sort of 1790 onwards. But I think the scope of this is really, really admirable. Now, individual episodes can be a bit shaky, and definitely it's dated in terms of its hair and makeup, and again, it's got inappropriate casting in it. But the themes that this touches on, I think, are really, really interesting. And I think if you look at Centennial as a whole, then you'll realize just how many more stories about the American West could still be told with more accuracy and more historical relevance. So yeah, Centennial, I definitely recommend checking this one out. There's a fantastic episode in this that involves Dennis Weaver as a cowboy, and some of the dialogue he gets to say there really, I think, conjures up the whole spirit of what a cowboy really should be. I really enjoy that side of it. And then also, this is a series that doesn't shy away from the cruelty that there was inflicted upon the Native Americans. Richard Crenna appears in this as a particularly evil and brutal cavalryman who signs the death warrant on a whole load of Native Americans, including children. It's really quite brutal. So overall, I do think this is a really, really interesting series. Definitely some shaky elements to it, but a whole load of it that's really, really interesting. And I do think that maybe Kevin Costner will have seen this and perhaps draws some inspiration from it. And in fact, one of the cast members of this, Glyn Turman, a really adept horseman, he starred in Centennial and also stars in Horizon and American Saga. So yeah, that's quite interesting. But certainly when it comes to TV today, it seems as though the Western is still quite popular. 1883, Taylor Sheridan's Western series, that's an offshoot of Yellowstone. This is currently in the top 250 TV series of all time on IMDb, according to its rating. Now, I do really enjoy this series. I thought it was really good. However, it is quite mawkish as well, and it shies away actually from telling some of the stories that it could have told. It ends up actually concentrating on one character too much and almost to a ridiculous level. But nonetheless, it's still a really interesting series, and it tackles a lot of interesting themes. You can definitely watch this as a standalone series without knowing anything about Yellowstone. Now, if it's not Kevin Costner and if it's not Taylor Sheridan telling the Western story, then what is it we want from a Western movie nowadays? Now, for me, definitely I do enjoy the sort of epic scope potential that there can be in a Western, where we get to see the desert valleys or the vast open ranges or the Rocky Mountains. I mean, it just is cinematic to tell a Western story with that kind of backdrop. But there's also these smaller, intimate tales that can be told. I mean, for instance, in more recent years, we've had great films from Kelly Reichardt that include Meek's Cutoff and First Cow. Tim Blake Nelson did Old Henry, which I thought was really good. But yeah, what other types of Westerns can we expect to see, or do we want to see? Now, when I go back to Centennial again and I think of all the kind of themes that are covered off in that, yeah, there's definitely a lot more potential. I mean, here, just crudely, we think of America as a vast country. Originally, we've got the Native Americans, we've got explorers coming in, the commencement of trade, furs and gold, prospecting, that kind of thing. Then we've got the movement of people towards the West and finding new places to live. That conflict then with Native Americans, division of land, formation of treaties, establishment of towns, establishment of railroads to connect, and then movement of cattle to feed people as well, outlaws, thieves, development of law and order, all that kind of thing. So you think of all the different types of narratives that could be told in a Western. There's still huge potential, I think. Now, what will we see in the months and years ahead for the Western? I don't know. It was disappointing to me that Chapter 1 of Horizon didn't do so well and its future is now uncertain. I did really like that idea of being able to go back to the cinema every few months and see the next installment. Something we don't get to see, and maybe we won't get to see it now. But yeah, just some general thoughts there. I haven't quite covered off everything I was going to say, I don't think. But yeah, let me know in the comments your thoughts on why didn't you go and see Horizon, and your thoughts on Western series and Western movies. What is it that you want from those? Have you seen those Western series? What types of Westerns do you want to go and see? Okay, that's it for now. Thanks very much for joining me on this one. Hope to see you again. All the best to you. Bye-bye.